Hey guys, welcome back to my podcast. I'm your host Sajjaad, and in today's video, we have a very special guest, AVNI. She is a person who's been in the tech field for a couple years now. She attended USC, ultimately graduated, got into big tech, and then actually decided to quit her job and start her own company. We're going to be having a really exciting conversation to kind of talk about her journey as well as provide a lot of insights of tools and resources to you guys. I know I gave a little introduction, but AVNI, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Avni. I spent my time in big tech. I was an engineer and then a product manager. And now I'm actually building my own company called GenShe. So really excited to share more about my journey and hopefully have some advice that's helpful for you guys.
Awesome. Yeah. So, kind of going a little back into your backstory, could you actually tell us how you broke into tech?
Yeah, for me, I grew up in the Bay Area, famous Silicon Valley. So this idea of technology and pursuing a tech career was so shoved down my throat from the very first day. I was like, that is the last thing I'm gonna do. I'm never going to do that. And I got really into art and I very much tried to ignore the tech meta of the Bay Area. And there was this program called Ivy and Young Academy, started by actually the founders of Beats, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. And they only were accepting 20 students. And it was a brand new program. And it was a degree in art, technology, and the business of innovation. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is my dream program. It combines all the things I was exposed to growing up and all the things I'm excited about. And I didn't feel like that was a possibility. So I was like, I'm not going to go to college unless I get into this. And I was so rebellious with my parents. I didn't even open a single college app. And I'm so grateful that I actually got in, thank God, because I have a college degree now. And I joined that program. And the degree in art, technology, and business of innovation is kind of a confusing degree. Like, what even is that? At the time, since it was such a new program, their curriculum was basically not there. So all of us were kind of doing these lemonade stand projects in school, very much focused around entrepreneurship and business. And naturally, we explored a lot of like software and how to actually build software companies. So I was like, okay, that's really awesome. I definitely want to build a tech company one day. That seems like the only company to build. So I need to go learn how to actually talk to engineers if I want to one day lead my own tech company. And I was like, cool, like I'll just go, work as a software engineer. And that's how I'm going to figure out how to talk to engineers. Okay. So then I applied to a bunch of things and I got nothing. I literally got no internship. No one even opened my resume. And I kind of had this critical realization that, being a little hacker on the side, building these like web apps is like not true software engineering. And I had to actually go take a computer science class in the School of Engineering and actually get a legitimate software engineering position for people to take me seriously. And so by this point of having all these realizations, I was actually a junior in college. So I didn't really have a time to go and get a computer science degree. It was also around the time that I realized that I wanted to probably start a company sooner rather than later. And so probably pursuing software engineering is not the path that is going to actually get me to learning entrepreneurial skills, learning how to be a good leader, learning how to be a good CEO. So I discovered product management. It felt like the perfect in between for me to build those technical skills and also to build those leadership skills so that when I'm ready to start a company, I can go do that. And the biggest feedback I got from product manager recruiters was, you have to be a computer science major or you can't even apply. Like that is a base qualification. This was like back then, this was like, I guess 5 years ago around. Lots has changed since then. But at that point, I figured that I wasn't going to let qualifications like that stop me from pursuing my dreams. So I was like, okay, well, I don't have time to go get a computer science degree. And I don't really have time to sit these classes because I have like one more summer to get something technical on my experience so that I can even apply for product management. What's better than a computer science major? Maybe the best software engineering internship at a top big tech company. Okay, crap. Like I need to go literally teach myself everything from scratch to go do that. So that's kind of what I did. I basically self-taught through lead code, prepped for these interviews, and landed a summer internship at LinkedIn as a software engineer. And that was kind of how I broke into tech.
Oh, interesting. So I know that you mentioned, so you were like software engineer, you went to product management and all that. Could you talk a little bit about like where you worked, what time frame, and also like for our audience, how much you made?
Yes. So I wanted to be a product manager the second I graduated as my first job. I was like, can't imagine doing anything else. The only programs that were available were APM programs. These were 2-year rotational programs, and they only existed at like a few of the biggest tech companies like
Hmm.
Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Atlassian. And the reality of the situation is a lot of people want to do that. So these were very competitive. And
Yeah.
most of these programs only had a few spots. In fact, Atlassian, the company that I ended up pursuing an APM program with, actually only hired one person my year. That's how competitive it was.
Wow.
So that was like a really wild ride to get it, but I really wanted it because it really felt like the right place for me to kind of explore and learn almost on someone else's dime.
Hmm.
So when I got that job, definitely dream job. My starting base salary was 130K approximately, but I made almost double that in total comp and perks. So
Wow.
definitely like when they told me, I like basically fainted. Like there was no negotiation
Yeah.
process. I was like, this is more money I've ever seen in my entire life. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Wow, that's insane. And how much did you make as a software engineer intern at LinkedIn?
Yeah, I actually made $50 an hour, which I know that number has increased a lot. This was again like 5 years ago. So you have to keep like that in context.
Okay, and were you in the Bay Area at that point?
Yeah, I was in the SF office.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. And I know, so I actually came across one of your TikToks a while back of you talking about how you were able to like land that software engineering internship.
Hmm.
And you were like, yeah, so I applied to 500 to 1,000 jobs, like that many positions. And you're like, yeah, in a tougher economy, you got to like double or triple that. And I was just thinking of like how true that is. You know, it's like,
Hmm.
it's almost kind of like a lottery system of like who gets selected to a certain degree, and like the more shots you apply, the better chance you have. Like for example, like you said at like your PM internship or PM job, they only got one person. That was you, right? So like you just got to keep shooting your shots. The more sort of darts you throw, the more closer you are to that bullseye at some point, right? So I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better than you. I think it's true. It's very much like a lottery ticket. I think the other thing that I want to emphasize about that is there is this old age concept of practice makes perfect that could not be more true. And I think oftentimes people believe practice comes in just sitting behind your laptop and practicing on your own. That doesn't count as practice. Practice
Hmm.
only counts when it feels real. You actually are in a situation that mimics the real situation where you have your body has adrenaline and nerves. And how do you actually perform in that setting? And how do you actually perform when you don't give yourself 5 tries to answer a question? And the reality of the situation, there's only really one way to actually create that situation. It's through a real interview. And
Hmm.
so that was what I did. I was like not applying to thousands of jobs because I felt like only one was going to call me back. I was applying to thousands of jobs because I wanted hundreds of practice interviews. That was how
Yes,
I was going to master
yes.
the process. So that was what it was for me and why. And yeah, every single job rejected me. I literally got like a million rejections and only one person said yes to me, and that was my job. And I was like, thank you, I'll
Yeah,
take
I mean,
that.
you
You
only
only
need
need
one.
one.
You need one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
So what was interesting about product management and that journey was I don't have the luxury of doing 1,000 interviews. There was like literally only 5 open roles, right?
hmm.
So what I did instead, in order to similarly lean on the process of practice make perfect, because I feel like that's the only way for me personally, and honestly, I feel like most people to really guarantee an outcome that you're looking for. I actually set up hundreds of mock interviews with other aspiring PMs all around the world. These are people I've never even met to this day. I would join like 10, 20 Slack communities, message hundreds of people, and set up these mock interviews because, funny enough, when you're talking to a random person you don't know and they're like a senior product manager at Facebook, they're trying to transition to like another company, you
Yeah.
freak out. I freaked out on those calls and I felt nervous, and it really simulated that real interview. So I was
Uh-huh.
still manufacturing and creating that fake environment to force myself to practice. And then the last like 10% of practices I did were the actual interviews. And that's how I ended up landing the job.
Interesting. Yeah. So, you know, it was funny when you mentioned that, like, you were just getting all these interviews for practice themselves, like treating actual interviews as practice themselves, because that's effectively what they are, especially if you get
Yeah.
rejected, right? It's just practice. And I remember like one of my internships, I worked at Amazon one summer, and I think my second round or final round interview was the same exact or very similar question to an interview that I failed at a previous company. and I was able to get it like very quickly, like the optimal solution, like right away. So I was able to like, pass the interview with like flying colors. And it just shows you like you really do need that practice. Like the worst case a company can say is no, they can just reject you. And then you're in the same position as you are before you applied. But now you have some interview experience. So I would just tell people just keep applying.
100%. I actually had exactly same similar situation where I kept
no
seeing
way.
the same questions over and over again, because the reality is these recruiters, they're not geniuses. They're all looking at the same script. And so at some point when you do enough, all the questions are going to just come back over and over again. And by the time you answer the third or fourth time, like, you're going to nail it. You're going to get the job.
Yeah. And kind of speaking on that point, so just off the books, anyone who's interested, if you're interested in applying to a particular company, like let's just say you're interested in working at Amazon, you can search up Amazon Software Engineering Internship Interview 2024. And there's usually like a Reddit post in which people are talking about the questions they got for that year. Typically, they recycle them. So just do your research. That's all I'll say.
Yes, definitely.
So I have some opinions on this, but I wanted to get your opinion about like PM versus software engineering. What are the differences like? Which one's better in your opinion? What do you say?
Yeah. I mean, first obvious thing, neither one is better than the other. But for a person,
what's your hot
one
take?
is better than the other. What's my hot take? Oh my God. My hot take is that PM is not going to be a job in 10 years. You really want to know my hot take? Go do SWE.
Okay.
PM is a shortcut. It's a lot of fun. And I really do think that really the only product managers, like if you think getting PM job is competitive today, it's going to be 100 times more competitive in 10 years. There will always be product managers that are needed at the company, but most product managers that exist today at the company will be gone because you only will need like a few product managers, and they're probably going to automate all the tasks from all the junior PMs down below through AI naturally. And I really do believe that it's going to be a point where the way you're going to differentiate yourself as a product manager is going to be something completely different, some niche skill you have that's unrelated to product management that's going to stand out, and you're going to literally lead all the AI robots doing all the PM tasks. So that's my real hot take about PM, but like that's very in the future. Like we're gonna just talk about the now. Like PM,
right now,
PM is not going now. Okay. Right now, I believe it depends on personality. My personality was I have like too much energy. I'm very extroverted. I'm very ADHD. Like I do not like to sit and like code for hours. I'm also not very detail oriented. Very much of a strategic, visionary thinker. So for me, software engineering did not bode well with my personality. In order to be a great software engineer, you need to really think about the details and think about the edge cases. You need to be able to focus for several hours at a time. It's definitely a less social job. You're not in a million meetings a day talking to a bunch of people. Like you maybe have stand up once a day. And so I would really encourage you to think about, well, which kind of person are you, right? And I don't think it's as standard as I'm introverted versus extroverted. And really like do that internal reflection to realize which one you're going to actually thrive in. And don't think, the one thing I want you to not think about is which one I'm going to be better at. No, think about which one I'm going to be happier at. I actually think that I would have probably been a better software engineer. I'm very quantitative. I picked it up pretty fast. I learned how to code in like 4 months and got a job. Like I clearly think in that way.
At LinkedIn.
At LinkedIn. So I clearly could have been a great software engineer had I stuck with it for literally more than a few months, right? I don't think that I was a brilliant product manager at Atlassian. I don't think that was a strength, but I liked my life better. I was happier. I had more fun because I got to flex the things that I was more interested in flexing, like my design intuition, like my product thinking. I liked to present strategy in meetings. I liked to convince stakeholders to push projects through the edge. So I think it's really much about like what's going to make you happy. At the end of the day, I really don't think that PMs and software engineers really get paid that much different. At the end of the day, if you're a great software engineer, you're going to get paid the most of the company. If you're a great product manager, you're going to get paid the most. So like, if you focus on like what makes you happy, you're going to win, because when you're really enjoying something, you end up beating your competition, becoming better than anyone, because it's so much easier for you to put in the work to be good.
Yeah. So I guess when I say like what my opinion was in this field, so I guess, my question, I asked you what's better, but that's not really what I was targeting. For my opinion, I would say like I love product managers in that I've never met like a not a non-social product manager because they're just like so fun to talk to because they kind of have to talk as part of their job. And I always tell people, like, if I wasn't a software engineer, I would probably be a product manager. I would not do anything technical. I love talking to people. I love like solving problems. Like basically how I tell my audience product managers are, they find the requirements from the customers, bully the engineers, and tell them what to do. Pretty much in a nutshell.
I'm not even going to disagree with that. But yeah, like I remember like I wrote this like, I don't know, it was like tweet an article or something when I was a product manager. I was like, to P or to PM, because you don't even have a minute to go to the bathroom. And when you're in these big tech companies, they give you like 100 million like fuzzy drinks and you just drink them all day. Like, you know, those like LaCroix and like lemonade and tea and blah, blah. So I'm like chugging all these free drinks, but I like don't even have a minute to go to the bathroom because there's back-to-back meetings all day. And this was like pre-COVID when you would go to work and you would actually go to physical meeting rooms to meet people. Oh my God. I just remember that being so stressful. And so imagine you're talking for like 9 hours a day. And then while you're in a physical meeting with people talking to them, you are also slacking away like a crazy person to your team who's at their desk. So like you got to be crazy social to survive the day-to-day of a PM job.
Yeah. Basically like, so you talk to the customers, find out their requirements, tell the engineers what to do, make sure the engineers like keep on track with like all the prioritizations, maybe like do some demos, like all that stuff. Like honestly, like the product managers need to be like on top of their game because like if they're not, customers upset, engineers confused, what's the company going to do, you know?
Exactly.
So, but I wanted to kind of throw this question back at you because like I personally don't know, but what are like some key skills that like someone needs to know to become a product manager? Because I've seen some product managers pursue CS degrees. I've seen them pursue, I know like you did like art, tech, and business. So like what is like the skill set there for PMs?
I think the number one skill is being able to rally a team behind a mission. No matter what is presented to you, especially when you're a product manager, you have to deal with so many corporate politics on a day-to-day basis because you get a lot of projects and get a lot of goals shoved down to you by the leadership. No matter how ridiculous it is, no matter how painful it is for engineers, you have to convince them to be excited about it, to work on it. So you have to be able to really rally a team behind a vision. And so that's why I often say, especially like people early in their career and especially students in college, the best thing you can do on your resume to really showcase and stand out as a leader is start a club, start a company, start something, build a team around it, because it really proves that you have that capacity to really rally a team behind something.
And so it's more of like the leadership communication skills that are like magnified here. But what are like the interviews like? Because obviously for software engineering, it's very like technical, elite code. What are your past projects? How do you really evaluate someone in an interview for PM?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I haven't done interviews in over 4 years because I did my interviews in college to get my full-time job, and I've never tried to get a job after that. But at that time, and I imagine it's pretty similar, so I don't think this is totally off base, there are effectively 3 separate interviews by 3 different people at the company. So you're going to have a product-focused interview, which is going to really be working with the interviewer and like trying to build a product literally vocally, like how would you go about and do that? There's going to be more of a quantitative element, so make sure that you actually have this like technical understanding. So depending on the company, this is going to like be very, very different. It could be as extreme as like actually walk through architecture, design, systems problems. I didn't do that. I didn't have those interviews, but like at a very, very technical company, yeah, they 100% will make you do that because you're going to have to be making those decisions on a day-to-day basis at your job. To something as simple as, can you estimate how many whatever, like teddy bears are in this shop or something, and they'll give you like they'll make it super vague and like, how am I supposed to know how many teddy bears are in the shop? Like what shop? So they want to make sure it's not really about like testing you on math skills, but it's really testing you on like, are you asking the right questions? So like maybe a question for that would be like, okay, what shop are we at? Like how many people are in the shop, or like things like that to get to an answer that makes sense. And they want to see you walk through that process. And then there's going to be a few definitely behavioral interview questions. So that's really where they're going to test and see, are you actually a leader? Do you have persuasive skills? Can you actually communicate well? And they're going to do this by walking through your experience.
So to kind of summarize the areas you're getting at. So it's like one case, sometimes it's a little technical. Another case, it's kind of like a resource constraint type thing where like you got to make decisions with limited resources, decide what to prioritize.
I think both of those fall under technical. Which type of, whether it's more quantitative and estimation versus it's more architecture and design system, depends on the type of company. And that's really where Reddit and Glassdoor comes in, for you can research like what type of company is this, what type of questions to ask them.
Okay, interesting.
And the third is like product focused, going about and actually designing products through your words and actually walking them through a whiteboard. That is a very standard product question. No matter what company you pursue, they're going to ask you that question. There's a very simple standard process they're actually looking for you to do that. And you can find those books in the like Cracking the Coding, Cracking the PM interview. These books, like they have those formulas breaking down. They're really famous for a reason. Like, don't ignore those books. Like that's like basic table expectations to even start the application process, is like deeply understand the concepts in those books. Like they're actually going to ask it.
So I have always had like this kind of like thought process for, in terms of PMs, I've always thought and seen the best PMs are the ones who understand the technical side pretty well. I mean, you can be a successful PM without understanding the technical side very well, but like better PMs usually can understand technical well, communicate really well, because they really understand the product well, really understand what the engineers can do in a limited scope of time. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, because you went from SWE to product manager, is there truth to kind of like that statement that I said of like the best PMs know the technical side of things?
Great question. Yes and no. It's more of a complicated answer. I think the extremity of you have to be a computer science major and you have to pursue a software engineering role of some type before you pursue PM, I think is a little overdone. There is nothing I did in that internship that actually helped me in my PM job. That's the truth. In fact, that's why I believe that their recruiters are more lenient on that metric now, because they're realizing it's like less relevant in actually being successful at the job. At that time, though, there was no way around it. So I did it. I think where it's really important is at the end of the day, like you're talking to engineers all day. Like I said, you have to rally a team of engineers behind a vision, and you're not their manager. You have no authority to do it. So you have to actually build respect with them. And so it's going to be very difficult to build respect with someone who you don't know what they're doing all day, right? If you haven't actually done the work of building something yourself and understanding their language and what they're talking about all day, and when you're having lunch with them, you don't know what they're talking about, like how are you going to be their friend? How are you going to build trust with them? How are they going to respect you? So that when you say, hey, can you go build this? They actually do it, and they do it well, and they make you look good to your management team, right? So
for sure,
that is really where I think it's very, very important. And there's many ways to go about it, right? One is obviously being an engineer first. Like there's no better way to empathize with someone other than having experienced it yourself. But there's also several other ways to do that. Just being technically understanding a concept doesn't necessarily mean you have to like actually go be an engineer in the workforce.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously like levels to it, right? You can understand, like, for example, like an engineer making a button might only require a couple days versus someone making a whole tab, a new feature requires more. So like understanding like those like things, you don't necessarily need to major in the subject to get that understanding. I wanted to actually go a little more into your background. I can't believe I didn't ask a little deeper, but so you said that you got your LinkedIn internship after 3 months of like getting into software engineering. Now that is impressive. I need some more explanation behind that.
Yeah, so I entered my first computer science class. This was my first semester of junior year. This was August. But what happens also in August is they start recruiting for internships, SWE internships in August. So I was like, this is day one of my computer science class and I know nothing, but I have only like maybe 6-8 weeks to get this job. So I need to know everything right now. So I was in this intro course, but it kind of really stood as like this backbone for me to use the TAs. But I was like at least 10 weeks ahead of the class because I had to be to land the job. And I landed my job. I think I remember it was specifically like the week before finals. And I was like basically failing all these classes too because I wasn't going to the class. Like I was prepping so hard. And I was like, oh my God, if I don't get a job, I'm also going to fail the class in the finals too.
Yeah.
So I remember it was like the last week of November or something. I think finals was like first week of December. And I landed that. I finally got my first yes and I landed that job. So I guess, yeah, it was exactly 4 months to getting that. And then I was like, wow, I actually know so much. And I actually aced all my finals.
Uh-huh. Cool. So like, other than the fact that you applied to like 1,000 different places, is there anything that like helped you, like any particular skills or resources to help you like learn and get that job in such a short frame of time?
Yeah, lead code till I die. That's what I say. I
Uh-huh.
literally spent 99% of my time on lead code. And I
Oh.
would not move on to the next problem unless I like deeply understood it. I think getting a problem right, I think that's where people get wrong. They
Mhm.
get the problem right and they move on. I got the problem right a long time ago, but I did deeply understand why the problem needed to be written that way. And
Mhm.
if I would be very honest with myself and I felt like I didn't understand it, I would do it again. And I would just like be very repetitive about the process. Again, like my biggest value in life is that practice makes perfect. So I'm going to incorporate that in all parts of the process for myself. But I did nothing other than lead code. Literally
Okay.
nothing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you like one of those like 2 hours a day type lead code person?
No, I was like 10 hours a day lead code type. Like I was psycho. Like let's not pretend it takes 2 hours a day. It takes way more than that, especially without the background and knowledge that I had. Like I literally like lost all my friends. And I remember my boyfriend at the time asked me like, are we still dating? Like I just haven't seen you in weeks. And I'm like, yeah, we're still dating. Just like don't bother me. I'm like pulled in the library. Yeah. So I went a little crazy, but it was worth it. I don't recommend this for anyone, by the way. It's like a little bit of a ridiculous way to pursue it. Like you can just start early, start on time, and take your time through the process. I just put myself in that situation unnecessarily.
I mean, if you want an expedited process, I guess.
Yeah, if you just want to like get it out of your system as fast as possible, yeah, you can do it that way. Just self-inflicted to torture, I guess. Cool. Well, what about you? What was your process? Did you do anything other than lead code to get your sweet internship?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that really helped me out. So when I think about like sweet internships is there's one part of actually getting an interview and then there's another part of actually passing that interview. And I think focusing on lead code, very, very helpful to actually passing the interview, but how do you get the interview itself? Um, Two things, having like a really, really well optimized resume. So I got this structure. I actually used to have a really bad resume. It was like this 2-column resume. It was like colorful resume, really like ugly looking resume from high school. And then like someone told me use this format, and this is the format I use, and I actually share with a lot of like my followers. It's like a standard black and white format that just like helped optimize my resume. But then ultimately after that, every single place you apply to, so like you apply to like thousands of places, as much as you can, try to get a referral. Obviously, don't prevent yourself from applying, but if you can get a referral, try to get a referral. Ideally, you want to message someone through LinkedIn or someone that you know in your network and be like, hey, would you be interested in referring me to an internship opportunity at your company? That's actually how I got both my internships in college, which ultimately led to a full-time opportunity. And especially now in like a really like crowded market in which the economy isn't too well, there aren't many positions. You really need to stack the cards as best as you can in your favor.
Yeah, you actually bring a great point. I was actually recruiting in a bull market. So a lot of these things that I didn't have to think about because there was plenty of recruiters ready to interview. It was really the hard part was actually acing the interview. But nowadays it's doubly as hard because you not only have to ace the interview, but you actually have to get the interview. So I actually do the same thing. I drop my resume in my bio so people can get an understanding of like how to optimize your resume because it's really important to do that. And I really say as well, like, don't reinvent the wheel. There's like a standard framework that works that actually goes through these like systems that manually automatically screen through them. Like, this is not a time to be creative on your resume. Like, use other points of time to be creative, like you said.
Yeah. But just make sure your resume just like at minimum is formatted properly. I don't know if you know, but I do like some resume reviews on my TikTok page. And some of the resumes I get, like they just like have their spacing all around. They have like spelling mistakes. And like this is like probably like one of the most important documents like in your life because it could literally get you hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're not putting effort into like making it look nice. And I get, okay, one of the most annoying comments I get is like, why is bro doing so much? He cares so much about all these small things. Well, it's like, it could get you so much money. Like,
oh my God, it's all, everything
make it
is
count.
always in the small details. Those are the things that take it over the edge. You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, so that's my point of emphasis, resume and referrals. Kind of going forward a little more into your background. So I think when I was talking to you before this interview, you mentioned how you were in LA at some point in your life, in SF at some point in your life, and in New York City at some point of your life. Major cities, major tech cities too. Could you kind of talk about like in what time periods you were there and like why you're there and like are those like good tech cities? What should people know?
Yeah, so I was in LA for 4 years. I was at USC, and I would say that at that time I was very much in the bubble of USC and specifically. And what I would try to do is on the weekends try to step out of that bubble. And there was just a lot of media and entertainment influence, which was really exciting. Then I got my job as a product manager at Atlassian. And then I moved down to SF because Bay Area, obviously, it's where all the tech companies are, it's where all the tech jobs are. At that time, this was pre-pandemic. There was no such thing as remote work. And so I remember specifically I wanted to stay in LA because I really liked the diversity of thought that I felt like I was missing in the Bay Area growing up here, that I was really excited about, but literally zero companies were recruiting for product management jobs as a new grad because there weren't really that many tech companies. I think it was like just Snapchat or something at the time, and they weren't even hiring early career people at that time. So had to move for that. And then I'm from the Bay Area, and very quickly, like within a few months, the pandemic happened in my job, and I ended up just staying there for the next 2 years because it was a very comfortable place to be. I could be outdoors all the time through the pandemic. Obviously, the weather's really nice in the Bay Area, and I didn't have to. I feel like a lot of people during the pandemic had to make this choice of going home or being alone in their apartment. And a lot of people basically resorted to being like a 16 in their childhood bedrooms, even though they're like working adults, because there was like no place to go. And I feel like I was privileged enough not to be in that situation because I had the flexibility to visit my parents whenever I want because they were nearby, but then still live in my own apartment and be an adult and be independent. Right about the time where pandemic was ending, Atlassian announced remote work anywhere for everyone. I've always dreamed of living in New York City since I was literally a kid. So I was like immediately flew out there, moved there, and took advantage of that. New York, I don't even know where to begin. New York really is a dream. It's definitely my favorite city of all of them. I am very purposely not in New York right now because I'm hustling to build my own business. And honestly, it's like way too fun there and way too distracting. And sometimes I need the boringness to actually build the stuff and like do the work. But those 2 years in New York definitely changed my life. I kind of like went through this feeling of having so much to do that I realized that my job was actually not going to serve as my identity and really bring the impact and fulfillment that I was looking for. I think for a while, I would blame the city I was in for not providing that fulfillment for me. And I would tell myself, well, when I go to New York, that's gonna bring me all that fulfillment. And when a city as perfect as New York, a place where I have nothing bad to say about, and it feels very equitable across tech and media and finance and so much diversity of thought across so many ages, I realized that this is ridiculous that I'm trying to find fulfillment in a city. I need to find fulfillment in my identity and my purpose. And my purpose is to build impact in the world. It's to build my own thing. And about a year into being in New York is really when I quit my job. And that was hard because I literally got my apartment 10 minutes walking distance from the office because I didn't have to go there every day. Obviously, it was remote, but I would go there for lunch every day. And it was this beautiful office and I would see my friends. So I felt like I had this like beautiful in-between balance of like, I got the social of the office and I got the perks without having to feel like I was constrained by location. And my team at Atlassian wasn't even in the New York office. So I was kind of just there because I worked there. So the last year of New York was when I was really hustling to build my business and figure out what that was going to be, is really when I actually decided to leave and be nomadic and be bi-coastal across New York and SF, because at the end of the day, if my number one priority is to build my company, which it is, and my company is centered around being near tech and being near communities of tech, I cannot ignore the value that San Francisco and the broader Bay Area has, and the population and the diversity of thought around technology that exists there, that by not being a part of it, I was truly doing a disservice to my goals. So
Mm,
there's so much benefit that New York has, especially since I'm building a media company, and there are a lot of like guests there that I filmed with that have truly brought a lot of impact to the community and like our brand.
mhm.
I found that like having equity across the cities for like my time was really important. And I'm also a California princess who just does not like to be in the snow. And so by being bi-coastal, I just optimize for being in the sun basically year
Uh-huh.
round. And it gives me that choice. One thing that I will say is I don't think I'm making it sound a lot easier than it is. The reality
Mhm.
situation is I've kind of got to this point in my life where I can text like one or two people and they live in these great apartments across these cities and are probably traveling, and I can sublease or just jump into their apartment, and it feels like I'm not in an unstable situation, but I came from like 8 to 10 years of building that network and like working
Mhm.
towards the point where I can text like one or two people and I'll have a place to live in any of these
Yeah.
cities. So I think if you don't really have that foundation across those cities, and I also built that foundation across living for extended times in those cities and actually like having that network, I think without it becomes like quite difficult. But I really do believe that the way to optimize your career is to be in as many of these big cities, specifically like really tech focused cities, as much as possible, because there are always pros and cons of each one. You're always going to get more from one and less from one, and vice versa.
Mhm. But like, so a person who's kind of just starting out their career, if they're deciding between like, let's just say SF in New York, what's
Hmm.
your opinion there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. And
Like
also
software engineering.
software engineering specifically. Okay,
Yeah.
for software engineering specifically, if you want to be part of a startup, I would say there's no other better place in the Bay Area. Like the startup community there, the co-working spaces, the venture studios there. Like it's really, really critical that when you're in a startup, whether you're a software engineer or really anyone, but
Hmm.
naturally like when a tech startup mostly has software engineers at that stage that the company's at, it's really important to like meet other people who are going through that with you, and also to hop around companies and hop around startups pretty easily, because that's really how you're going to like get a better understanding of like where you need to be and also get promoted and make more money and all those things. So I definitely recommend that for specifically that. If you're in big tech though, and if
Hmm.
that is your goal, I actually recommend like New York or LA. I actually do not recommend tech for that. Sorry, I
Why?
don't recommend Bay Area for that, because I think that because big tech is so flexible around remote environments, and
Hmm.
unlike a startup, you don't actually need to go to the office to get that like deep productivity that the company needs. A lot of the people who work in these big tech companies have basically left the Bay Area or have like migrated to like suburbs and stuff. Especially, I'm assuming that like your audience is young and early
Hmm.
in their career. You don't want to kind of go to an empty office every day. You want to focus on being in a city where there are other young, ambitious people that you can easily meet. I do
Hmm.
find that SF is not very social, and it is quite difficult to meet people outside of the startup ecosystem. And
Hmm.
so if you're not part of the startup ecosystem, you're going to be very lonely there. New York is like the easiest place to make friends. It's the easiest place to be social. So if you're in a big company, you don't need to rely on your company to really build that initial network and build that social circle early in your career. That's going to be incredibly important to set you off on a career trajectory in the future.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I actually last year, right after or I guess 2 years ago, right after graduation, moved out to San Francisco, like San Francisco, the city proper, and the office was empty. It was remote work.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated it. It was like it felt like a ghost town to me. In my personal opinion, the Bay Area is great. The
Yes.
like I love everything except for San Francisco and the Bay.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind
Uh,
of agree.
Okay, okay.
Is
Yeah,
that why
so
you
were you in the
left?
city? Yeah, yeah, that's why, like, there were so many reasons why I left. It was expensive, dirty, and, like, remote work. Like, there was no point of me actually being there, and I was just like, "What am I doing here?" I was, like, trying to, like, move out, like, make a life out in the West, but it just wasn't my vibe whatsoever.
I mean, as someone who currently is from here and lives in SF voluntarily when I can literally live anywhere, I'm still saying
Uh-huh,
this. I don't like SF. And I totally agree with what
uh-huh,
you're saying. All the things you're saying are very real about it. The reason why I'm there is because my studio is there and my partner is there and my best friends are there. And so if I really need to lean on the support system around me, I have to be in SF. But the external, social, and the cleanliness and all these other things that you're describing, yeah, it's not there. And I'm like fully avoiding it at all costs. I actually do think that
Okay.
South Bay and the Bay Area broadly is much better. Like it's sunnier, it's
Wonderful.
beautiful,
Wonderful.
so much
Yeah.
outdoors, but it's not social. You're not going to find any 20 somethings here. And when
Hmm.
you're young, it's really critical that you surround yourself with young, like minded people who are going to professionally and personally grow you. So
Yeah.
you're kind of stuck in this in between here where you're
Uh-huh.
like, well, this is a better like area, but then I can't be social here. So you're kind of something, which is why I'm really, really pushing people to think more about how can they live more flexible, nomadic, remote lives across different cities and be in those cities when it makes sense and leave those cities when it doesn't make sense, right? That's a big reason why I leave SF for half the year, because if I would literally go crazy if I had to be here all year.
Yeah.
So I noticed how I did not recommend LA through any of this. Like LA,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I don't recommend
I
LA
thought
for
we just
tech.
like pushed that away. Yeah.
We just pushed away. It's like
Yeah.
LA, I will go there for weekend trips till I die. Like obsessed with the city, like it's beautiful, gorgeous, and also being in media now, like there's more work reasons to go there.
For sure. For sure.
But speaking purely from the tech perspective, there was like a negative reason to ever be there for building a
Yeah.
career in tech.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think if you just take the social aspects of New York City and then plop that in South Bay, that would be wonderful.
Oh, dream life, dream city. I feel like the rent would be like $10 million per square
Oh,
foot.
for
if it
sure.
happened
Easily,
like
easily.
that. Yeah.
But anyway, so kind of moving away from like the city's topic, I want to talk to you about like your business and why did you decide to quit your job? When did you decide to do this? And what is your business now?
Yeah, great question. So kind of mentioned this earlier, but I was feeling very unfulfilled and unchallenged in my role. I actually do truly feel like I had the dream job and worked at the dream company. Like Atlassian is like one of the best cultures in the world. Like their founders are from Australia. So they have
Mhm.
this like very bubbly, lackadaisical attitude, but still a really strong like business and product perspective. So you feel like you're in an environment that doesn't have a lot of pressure, but you're also like learning a ton of things and building great things and making the company a lot of money, right? Which is like, what could be better than that? I also was a
Yeah.
product manager, which was my dream job. The problem was I truly felt like the things that I was doing was not having broad impact on the company. And it was going to take like 10 years to be in a senior role. And I just didn't, I'm way too impatient to wait for that long. Plus, I kind of, like I mentioned, I actually started GenShe in college. So
Yeah.
GenShe was lingering in the back of my mind as this unfulfilled dream. Like at some point, it would become louder and louder and louder to the point where like I couldn't ignore it and I had to quit my job. I was literally unwell, to say the
Yeah.
least. And when I quit my job, I felt like a huge weight lift off the shoulder because I kind of like finally felt for the first time autonomy over my life and my time. The reality situation is when I quit, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea what GenShe was. It was just a name of a company. It was a brand. It was a mission. There was no product. There was no business model. There was nothing. I had no
Oh,
idea what it was doing.
okay. But you know,
Negative.
there was something in the back of your mind that was like
I was
pulling
like,
you towards.
I believe that women need more resources, more conversation around building equity in the workplace and being leaders and building companies. There's just this totally missing. There's a huge need. I don't
Mhm.
really know how I'm going to provide that, how I'm going to make money from it, what it's going to be, but I do feel this feeling and I want to be the one to solve it because I feel very passionate about it. That was kind of when I quit. That was all I knew.
Mhm.
And growing up in the Bay Area, going to the INTERN Academy at USC, being in the tech industry, there was only one way to build a business. It was to build product. It was to raise venture money. And that was it. That was all I knew.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I'll go do that. So I did that. Within like 2 months of quitting, I raised money for a product, for an idea. And then after I raised money from it, I hired my first employee and I built the product in a month and I launched it the next month.
What was the product?
I won't go too into it, but it was effectively like an HR product meets a community membership where there are basically very little women at early stage startups. And so building a
Mhm.
community membership model around that, where if the company would pay to use their service to hire top female talent, specifically tech talent. And if the female engineer or whatever was hired, they would get to join this exclusive community of the best early career female tech talent. It actually
Mhm.
went really well. We onboarded a bunch of customers. We grew that up to 4,000 users. This is all within 4 weeks. And I kind of felt this icky pit in my stomach of actually, this is not going to truly deeply solve the problem. It feels like I'm now actually making companies pay for women And that feels backwards. And there is deeply community missing for the young woman at an early stage startup. That is for sure a problem needs to be solved, but I don't want to solve it this way. And so I shut down the app. I returned the money to my investors. I ran to Japan for a month. I don't know what I'm doing, but like I'm panicking and I'm confused and I'm lost and I'm getting back to this feeling of feeling unfulfilled and feeling like I'm in the wrong place. And that's like, I didn't quit my job to feel this way again. So I came back from Japan with renewed clarity, and I realized not exactly yet what I wanted to build, but that I renewed clarity that I didn't want to build this. And that's when I returned my money to investors. And then I joined this venture studio called Founders Inc. in San Francisco. It's literally just a startup community space. I was like, these are my people. Let's hang out there. I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. That's fine. And I mean, I just felt so much belonging. I felt at home there. I became really good friends with the team. There is a podcast studio they have there. And one of the members of the team who I was friends with at the time convinced me, they're like, why don't you just start a podcast? At that point, I didn't have anything going for me. So I started a podcast. Oh my God. I like instantly fell in love with the process. My community started really, really engaging with it and loving it. And it was kind of this instant moment. I was like, oh, what I need to build is a media company. That's truly how I'm going to close the gap for education around what this is like. And really, that is truly how I'm going to build conversation around how women are going to really build impactful, fulfilling careers for themselves, really going to figure out how to actually build businesses, how to actually make money. I have to do that through conversation, through media, through content, through actually sharing the stories of other women. And at the end of the day, the way that you monetize that the best is through media. So doesn't matter that I've never been in media as an industry. I know nothing about it. Doesn't matter that I've never been an influencer. I've never created any piece of content before. If this is truly my mission, this is truly my destiny on this earth, and this is truly what's going to make me happy, I have to go build this company, and I have to learn what it takes to do it. If at some point in time I learned how to code in 4 months, I'm sure I can figure this out too. And that's kind of what started. And this was around July of last year. So that was
the impact that you can have like through this media, right? Just like the amount of different people you can reach in all corners of the world, just to share your mission, is really awesome. So just to reiterate, so what specifically is like your mission, your accomplishments thus far in GenShe?
Yeah, so we have a community of 300,000 women all around the world, which is really exciting.
Wow.
And the focus is truly on helping young women figure out like how to build fulfilling and impactful careers that make sense for them. That could be in the context of a 9-to-5 job, so they could live their best 5 to 9s. That could be not being in corporate and building their own business. That could be a venture-backed business. It could be a bootstrap business. And how do we do all of this while still doing what makes us a woman, being feminine and like loving the journey through that process, right? It's like for some, there's this constant stereotype like women have to have children and they have to have families and they have to do all these, what if they don't, right? Or what if they do? Whatever the answer is, there just isn't enough context and resources to around how we can make those decisions and how we can optimize that to build our best versions of our career and side by side without sacrificing those goals. And so that's truly the mission of GenShe. And we do that through multiple channels, right? We have our newsletter, we have our podcast, we also have social across TikTok and Instagram, and we also have community and events and resources. At the end of the day, my number one thing that I want to make sure stays true to our mission that I did not feel in my first iteration of this company. I never want to charge the consumer. If we're ever going to ungatekeep information or ever going to provide resources, it has to always be free. And so the way that we monetize is we work with big companies who want to get the eyeballs of our audience, just like any sort of media company works. Have sponsors. A lot of exactly, sponsors. I have a lot of ideas of like some things I want to launch in the community, like products and things like that I'm not going to say on the pod because it's a surprise, but just really excited to
stay tuned,
really
guys.
So that's a little bit about it.
Awesome. So I want to get into a little more about like just kind of like tech/entrepreneurship, as a person who's kind of been in both, in terms of like the outlook of like the different types of businesses. I know a lot of people who are traditionally like in the tech route want to create like a startup, want to code something, want to create like a product and then sell it out to the world, kind of like what you were describing earlier. But you kind of went a different route. If I were like a college student interested in starting a company in like the next couple of years, what type of business should I be looking into?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not realize this 6 months ago. This is very new of realization for me, but I really do think the best company to start right now is a media company.
Okay.
And it's because AI is growing so fast. Like AGI is truly around the corner. I don't mean like tomorrow. I mean, I don't mean like within the month, but at the end of the day, software is becoming really commoditized. It's becoming easier than ever to build apps. Like literally, like a freshman in Berkeley can build sophisticated apps like Uber. Why do companies like Uber win? Because they own distribution, they own the network of riders and drivers. So you could literally build the exact app that Uber has tomorrow, and you will make no money because the riders and drivers are not on your app. That's truly what builds the value of this company, right? So if it's going to be easier than ever to build software, and if you have a good idea, I can just copy it overnight through some like GPT commands. The people who are building software, the best engineers are not going to actually win in the business world. It's going to be the people that own distribution, own networks, that own content, that happens through media. And so for sure, I'm going to build many, many companies in my lifetime. Like this is not going to be my last company, but now I have a significant advantage over anyone else who's going to build a company because I own an audience and I have a network, a distribution of users that I can launch these products into, where if someone else is building the exact same product as me, I will still win because I own the users, and the value of my product is going to increase because I'm going to have more people using it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like when it comes to like media, right? There's no like other business really where you can like literally like talk to your phone and reach a million people plus, right? Like it's pretty insane. Like I said, like the proliferation of like social media as a business, part of the reason kind of like why I'm in it, right? Just like reaching the most amount of eyeballs possible.
Exactly. No, I fully agree. I mean, how did you get into podcasting? I mean, you're an engineer right now, so it feels, even though you talk a lot about tech content, I feel like you have to be very woke right now to pursue this in your free time.
Yeah, I mean it's fun, right? It's I started posting like social media short form on TikTok and Instagram June of this past year, June 2023. And I slowly grew like an audience over like towards the end of the last year, and I started like the podcast, I think November. I think that's when the first episode came out. And it's just been really cool just talking to different like content creators who are in the tech space. Cause although like we are all sort of like in the grandiose of the tech space, how we came about and like specifically what we do in tech is very different. And so I know like on my channel I talk a lot about how to become a software engineer, how to pursue computer science, but there's so many different opportunities, and I personally get a lot of comments and questions, and like I try to answer to the best of my knowledge, but also like I need to learn, talk to other people who are in the field. So now I can make videos about tech entrepreneurship after talking to you, you know? So I just think just being able to talk to people, expressing your thing. Like I mentioned before, it's like if I wasn't a software engineer, I would be a product manager because I love talking. Well, part of the reason why I love talking, or part of the way I'm able to express that, is like through talking to various tech professionals too. It's kind of like networking, right?
Oh my 100%. I feel like, so half my podcasts from my season one, I'm good friends with them now. Like I hang out with them all the time, and they have
Oh,
opened
nice,
up so
nice.
many opportunities for me. It's actually ironic. Even if no one watches your podcast, it actually is the best way to network. Like I say, everyone started a
100%.
podcast. This is not something that only big influencers or only media companies should pursue.
hmm Yeah, I mean, it's just like you just like have a conversation, but record it and put it out to the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be
Just
easier than ever before with all the social media apps and platforms that are out there to really get your content discovered. It's just a very exciting
100%.
time.
Yeah, and you don't even have to like be with this. Like you're in the West Coast, I'm in the East Coast right now. We're recording this, we're talking to each other, so it's
I
crazy
literally
what we
record
can
this on
do.
my phone. Like you don't even need
Yeah.
any crazy technology. Like, just go for it.
Well, awesome. So I kind of want to ask you one more question before we wrap up here. So, one big concern I've had some guests on this podcast who've expressed being a woman in STEM, facing some issues at workplace from time to time, facing issues at university from time to time, how to sort of like navigate the situation. And I was curious if you had any things from like your experiences you could share with the audience, any advice to any women who might be watching this?
Yeah. Oh my God, so many. I mean, my first foray, my first few forays into tech and actually having real work experience, I was consistently the only woman on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And these are very resourced companies. So I did find it quite shocking when I was the only woman on my team. I just didn't expect it. I think at the time I kind of ignored it or like didn't really focus on it too much. But I did find that around the end of my time and experience that I did feel like my manager had more of a negative impression on me because he felt like I wasn't spending a lot of time with the team and that I wasn't really being a team player. The reality of the situation is I didn't feel like my best friends were like a bunch of other single men who were wanted to play basketball, play video games in their free time. Like I wasn't really interested in that. I found myself actually like sneaking away to like the marketing teams or the recruiting teams and making friends in there. I'm a very social person. I'm not going to sit at my desk alone or like be awkward and do something that I don't want. I'm also not someone who's ever going to sacrifice my identity, my personality to fit in or for corporate politics. When I was at Atlassian, I was in a team that was the head of that team was actually a woman, and the whole way down, all women. And it's because she hired them all. And it was a very equitable environment. And I found that it was so empowering to be a woman on Atlassian. And I really, really realized for the first time in a very long time the impact it can have to feel a sense of belonging and the safety and the excitement you feel coming to work when there are people who you feel like are similar to you, who share context with you. I had a lot of friends who were guys. I'm not saying I only talk to women. You need that balance. You need there to be some of everyone. This is across race. This is across like neurodivergence. This is across everything. And ultimately, the biggest reason why we had that was because the leader, the hiring manager across the entire vertical was a woman, and she was not hiring a lot of women. She was just hiring equally men and women because she was just excited about that and changing the space at Atlassian. So I feel like the best thing you can do as a woman is kind of take the plunge. If you have to be the first woman on the team, if you have to be the first one on the startup, do it and bring women with you. Like you can change the company for the better, and you can truly be that person for someone else who can make them feel safe and excited about coming to work every day. I kind of, in my first product, I wanted to do that for startups. I wanted to give them a platform to hire women if they had none, and then give that woman a community and a membership to go to because they weren't going to find that at the company. And I wanted to encourage that. Reality is you can't break through that wall and bring women at the company until you have your first one. And then it becomes easier to get your second one. And it becomes even easier to get third one. And it's always the chicken and egg cycle, and the beginning is always the hardest. So sometimes you have to be the woman who sacrifices for the greater good of the culture of the company in the future, and you can actually be the change at that company.
I see.
This is obviously much harder at bigger companies, right? This is much easier when you join earlier companies.
I guess like in college, I guess you were kind of in a mix of like the art tech business. Did you have like, was it like I know like computer science is very like male dominated, and I know like some girls sometimes feel out of place. Did you ever have like any of those feelings in college?
Of course. We were not an equal class. There were more men in our class than women. It was still like pretty equal, so it never bothered me. I never noticed it. But there would be often times, and this has nothing to do with the School of Engineering or the Ivy and Young Academy. This happened actually across both times, obviously more when I was in School of Engineering. I would often be in group projects where I was the only girl, which was totally fine and like not weird at all. Like I was completely unbothered by it, especially when the bear was like often in rooms of all men and being the only girl, I like didn't even notice. But when like this literally happened to me, I know it sounds so ridiculous, but when they're putting everyone's name at the end of the group project except for yours and publishing the website, you're like,
wait, that happened?
Yeah, that happened to me. And I was like, you're not serious. Like, this is a joke. Obviously, the teacher knows I did the project. Like, it's fine. But you're just like, this is ridiculous. Come on. You just ignored me the whole time. Or like an example is we were like, we have to build one of our class projects, like, okay, go build an app. And everyone's like, okay, first meeting, everyone bring ideas of what we're going to do in the app. And so I'm like, I had 10 ideas. One guy had 0 ideas. Another guy had 1 idea. And then they go, I say all my 10 ideas, and then that one guy says one idea, and they're like, okay, we'll do that one guy's one idea. I was like, I literally had 10 ideas. You couldn't find one idea for mine. And then they'd be like, oh, and this other guy would be like, oh, what about this idea? And I was like, I literally said that, bro, but sure, we could just pretend it's your idea. And it's these small microaggressions that I don't think is happening consciously. I think it's like ingrained from society internally. I do think that it's gotten so much better. And I do think at those times I was a very shy and unconfident girl. So I would like let it happen. It doesn't happen now. Like even in the startup studio co-working space that I talked about, I'm also the only girl there. There's basically like no other women there. There's like a few sometimes, but mostly not. I walked into the room. I'm fully confident in myself. I understand my value. I don't feel weird that I'm like mostly hanging out with guys. Like I'm used to it now. And I feel like I can enter rooms like that. But that is a ridiculous expectation to have from everyone. I had to like build that thick skin over time, literally to survive, literally to feel known and to feel heard, to not feel insecure when I walk into rooms. And I do feel like that is truly the way to not let gender impact you in these environments. But I do feel like that is a ridiculous ask of women everywhere to do that in order to succeed. But there are hundreds of thousands of women all around who do that every day and completely knock it out of the park and totally kill it.
Personally, I obviously can't like relate in that regard because I'm not a woman, but I do. Another thing sometimes happens in tech is this thing called ageism, where like the younger people, their opinion isn't like valued as high as like someone who's senior. I mean, right? Like someone who has more experience. And so kind of like your advice applies there. I've seen it's like you just kind of have to like keep pushing at it. Like even if your voice isn't heard in a meeting, just like keep going at it and like having that thick skin. I think it's really valuable for like any sort of like micro discrimination, aggression, or whatever like we want to call it. It's like you gotta like be confident and develop that thick skin and just keep going at it.
Totally. I think one tip that I say that really helped me was when I was working there, I was like one of the youngest product managers. So constantly having my voice heard was a continuous challenge. And there were many times I would like fully spec out full projects and then like people would just talk over me or totally scrap it. So what I did was I created a little Slack channel with like the entire leadership team all the way to the top.
Wow.
And every Friday I would give them an update of everything I did and the achievements that I did. 99% of the time, no one acknowledged it. No one even reacted to it. And then a few times they would like react to like, that's cool or that's sick or whatever. And, you know, it's uncomfortable to be ignored and it's uncomfortable to like be constantly throwing yourself out there and like saying this is what I did, this is what I did. But what you don't realize is every single person is reading it. They're reading it. They might not be reacting to it. They might be ignoring it, but they're reading it. And so when it comes to the promo and when it came down to who's going to get the project, they always thought of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm every Friday, I'm like the most top of mind. I'm like ridiculously annoying in their face. How can they forget about me? And because I'm only talking about my positive wins, they positively associate with me. Because if you don't create an association in their head, they're going to have no association. They're not thinking about you. So
you got to advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can either stay at neutral, which is like they never think about you, or you can manufacture a version of yourself and give it to them. And then they keep that. And that becomes a reality.
Yeah, exactly. I love that because you got to advocate for yourself. No one's like checking over you to make sure like you're excelling. It's not like school where you got like a teacher who's grading you. You got to actually prove to yourself like this is what I've accomplished. And yeah, for those who don't know, I think it was like your TikTok about like how I made an extra 40K as a lazy tech worker or something like that, right?
Yeah, because I would do things like this where this doesn't take any time. I'm already doing that work. I just then copy and paste that into a Slack channel, right? So there's a lot of, I think people underestimate how much vocalization and politics and framing really comes into this play when you're at a very big company. This would not work at a startup, by the way, everyone. Please remember that. This is like very much like a big company thing. You can have 40K pay bumps and you can have power like that when you do these little things consistently.
Yeah, for sure.
Just about knowing what to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, Avni, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I really appreciate you hopping on this call today, talking to us. I personally learned a lot about both like your tech background as well as like entrepreneurship. And just once again, thank you. For anyone who's curious, make sure to check out Avni's pages as well as like the GenShe podcast. If you want to plug your socials, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Avni Barman _ everywhere, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. and Jen.she everywhere, TikTok, Instagram. So follow along either. But thank you so much for having me. I honestly had a blast.
Awesome. Well, take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.